So let's see the next one. Indian Council Act 1861. So 1861, the British government, now it is British government of India. Since last act we have seen the last act. So Indian Council Act 1861 is the important landmark in the constitutional and political history of India. So remember that it is important act, that is landmark in the Indian constitutional and political history of India, because India's cooperation in the administrative activities are important to rule by the British crowns. In this act, British Council Act, this is a very landmarking act for the Indians. That is, constitutional and political history of India. So, what are the achievements under this act? Let's see the Viceroy of India. This act provided the Viceroy should nominate some Indians. Remember that in this act only for the first time some Indians were nominated, and as a non-official members. It might be non-official members, but it given the some power privileges to the Indians to be nominated. Lord Canning, Lord Canning, Lord Canning, Viceroy of India. The time the Lord Canning is the first Viceroy for India also. So he nominated three Indians to his Legislative Council 1862. Legislative Council 1862. Raja Benares, the first one, Maharaja of Patiala, second one, Sir Dinkar Rao. So these three people were nominated to the Legislative Council in 1862 by the Lord Canning. It initiated the process of decentralization. It started by for the process of decentralization by restoring the legislative powers to the Bombay and Madras presidencies, and it established the new legislative councils for the Bengal 1862, Northwestern provinces 1886, and the Punjab 1897. Remember that it established the new legislative councils. For the first one is the Bengal, second one is the Northwestern provinces, and the third one is the Punjab. These three legislative councils were established. This act empowered the viceroy to make the rules, orders for the more convenience transaction of the business in the council. It act empowered the viceroy of India, Lord Canning, that it empowered to make the rules, orders for the more convenient transaction of the business in India. The portfolio system, it introduced the Lord Canning that led to the establishment of cabinet system. Cabinet system also established, so it's given the power to the viceroy, so that's why it uh, established the cabinet system also. So act empowered the viceroy have the absolute veto power. So this is important. So it empowered the viceroy absolute veto power, given him the power issue ordinances during the emergency. During the emergency, viceroy can take the any decisions. He have the absolute power, without concurrence of the legislative councils. Such the ordinances was 6 months. Those ordinances only for the 6 months. So some important notes here. Keep in mind, the viceroy could nominate three non-official Indians. He nominated three non-official members. So first is the Raja of Benares. Remember that Raja of Benares. Second, Maharaja Patiala, and third one is the Sir Dinkar Rao. These three were nominated for the first time from the Indian side. Those are all for the non-official members. That is, given the privileges, and restored the legislative powers of the Bombay, Madras. These were, earlier they were ended up, but now they are restored. And Viceroy can make rules, orders for the convenient business transaction. Viceroy can issue ordinances during the emergency. So Viceroy empowered with the some absolute veto powers. It initiated the process of decentralization by restoring the legislative powers to the Bombay and Madras. It empowered to decentralization. Again, Bombay and Madras presidencies could be restored. And some key points, those are all important for the exam. Viceroy appointed three non-official members. So one is Raja Benares, Maharaja Patiala, Sir Dinkar. So remember that. And the second one restored the legislative powers to the provinces. Those three provinces of the Bombay, Madras, they were restored. And the viceroy has absolute power. Viceroy having the absolute power to make rules, orders, ordinances during the emergency. So important act for the Indian constitutional and political history. So Indian Council Act. This is important for the political and constitutional history in India. It initiated the process of decentralization by restoring the legislative powers Bombay and Madras. So these points you should keep in mind. Lord Canning still is the Viceroy of India. He having the absolute veto power, so that's why he can make the ordinances and rules during the emergencies. And let's see the next act. The next one, Indian Council Act 1892. So 1892, British Government of India. So it increased the non-official members, additional members in the central and provincial legislatives. 2 by 5 of the new members were non-officials. 2 by 5 new members were non-officials. It allowed the power to discuss budget. This is given the some more powers to discussion over the budget under the Indian Council Act 1892. What are the achievements? So, Viceroy of India, it increases the number of additional non-official members and central and provincial legislative councils. Those members 2 by 5 of the new members were non-officials. So this act provided the increased the functions of the legislative councils and gave them the power of discussing the budget and also allowed the addressing the questions of the executives. They can address the questions to the executives and they can discuss about the budget. And this act provided the nomination of the some non-official members of the that Central Legislative Council by the Viceroy on the recommendation of provincial legislative councils. This is important. The act provided the nominated of some non-official members of that Central Legislative Council by the Viceroy. But what is the condition here? On the recommendation of the provincial legislative councils and the Bengal Chamber of the Commerce. So this is important that the provincial legislative councils by the governors on the recommendation of the district boards. On the recommendation of the district boards, municipalities, universities, and trade associations and jamindars and chambers. So these are all the important key points. The act introduced the direct election, produced provision in the filling of the some of the non-official seats, both the central and provincial legislative council. The term election is not used, though it is the indirect election, but the term election is not used the time. Let's see the some keynotes which are important for the exam. 2 by 5 of the non-official members were increased. And the second, election procedure followed, but the term election is not mentioned anywhere. Election procedure were followed, indirect election procedure for the filling of the some non-official member seats, but they were not mentioned the term election. Non-official members, central legislative councils nominated by the Viceroy, central legislative councils nominated by the Viceroy on the recommendation of provincial legislative councils and Bengal Chamber of Commerce. Non-official members, provincial legislative council nominated by the governor on the recommendation of district board, municipalities, universities, trade association, Jamindar and chambers. So the key points I am again reminding you. 2 by 5 of the non-official members were increased. Term election was not used, though they are followed the indirect election to nominated the non-official seats. Central legislative councils nominated by the Viceroy and the provincial legislative councils nominated by the governors. This is all about the Indian Council Act 1892.